So they looked at Indian texts to the extent that they wanted to get names of some kingdoms and names of some kings, but beyond that, they ignored the dates. I will get into that. So maybe let's recap. Is everyone here? Did everyone here attend last week's talk?
Yes.
Yeah, I was able to attend the Sudarshan here.
I was there in the last.
Is there anybody that was not able to attend last week's talk?
I think so. Most of them have attended, sir. So that's okay. You can continue, sir.
All right. So what I really wanted to do was to try and summarize what we covered first. So
Sorry to interrupt, sir. I attended. I did not. I was not able to attend the full session because of some technical issue. So if you can give us a preamble, right, as to what you have discussed last week, in maybe in 2 minutes, that would be great.
That's what I was about to say, that I will do a quick recap of what I covered last week so that provides the context for today's discussion. So this is organized into 3 parts. I covered parts 1 and 2 last week. The first part is a biography of the author. And so this is what we covered. This is part 1, biography of the author. And in that, we talked about how he was a traditional scholar who had spent 40 years doing research and 11 years publishing his books for a total of 51 in reconstructing chronology from ancient texts. He has been conferred many titles over his lifetime, and I list some of them here. And he eventually became the Shankaracharya of the Abhinava Virupaksha Pitam, which is an Upapitam of Sringeri. And at that point, he was known as Jagadguru Shankaracharya Sri Advayananda Sankara Bharati Swami. His methodology was reliance on texts as primary evidence. He did not ignore other evidence, but he used them only to corroborate, meaning prashastis, inscriptions, coins, archaeological findings, astronomical findings, even tradition and folklore. So he used these to corroborate, but he used the primary texts as primary evidence. And in that, he asserts that Puranas and Itihasas are a wonderful source of history. Here are some papers he has written. He was also a contributor to a historical society in Andhra Pradesh, where he has presented his discoveries. He has defended his assertions and has refuted disagreements. Now, his approach was to take the entire history. Where does one start? And so his philosophy or approach was establish the correct sheet anchor first, meaning a sheet anchor is a date on which other dates depend. So if you can correctly place the sheet anchor and date the sheet anchor, then all the other dates can be identified and established. So in his mind, the sheet anchor was the Mahabharata war because he felt that everything else depended on the date of the Mahabharata war. And then he followed genealogies of long-lived kingdoms. Now, these long-lived kingdoms were not just Indian. No one has done this much work in actually trying to corroborate history of India with, let's say, neighboring countries like Nepal, like Persia. He also looked at the history of Kashmir independently. He looked at Buddhist and Jain texts also, because there were major events in the lifetime of Buddha and in the lifetime of Mahavir Jain that corroborate other dates that are important to us. So correlating with all of these, we have to corroborate with contemporary literature, inscriptions, coins, prashastis, and even foreign sources. And we'll get to an example of that. Now, his works, we said, provide a complete framework. Why? Because 1, he identifies all the distortions made. He identifies the people who made those distortions in his books. So you have a complete list of who were responsible for these distortions in the first place. Secondly, he provides a completely reconstructed chronology from 3138 BC to 1193 AD. And in doing so, he completely reconciles not only provincial sources of Itihasa, but also that of neighbors like Nepal and Kashmir. I'd like to stop here for a second. When he was actually looking up Nepal history and Kashmir history for references, he found distortions in Kashmir's history is documented in a book called Rajatarangini, written by Kalhana. So in Kalhana's Rajatarangini, he found distortions introduced by the East India Company. And some of them he pointed out and said these could not have been written by Kalhana, who was a great Sanskrit scholar. And I identified those slokas over here, 49, 50, 51, and 54. So if you'll excuse me for a moment, let me show you the originals. I think they're in the other room. I wanted to show you the original books that were published 70 years ago. I'll show you an example. So, for example, I have some of these, which are from the original publication from the 1950s. So this is the plot in Indian chronology. Then we have, this is a book on Buddha's lifetime. So I just wanted to show you these. But the point is that he found distortions in Rajatarangini, so he had to spend time actually correcting Rajatarangini itself. He also found distortions in Nepal Rajavamsavali, and so he had to spend time correcting the Rajavamsavali also. And once he reconstructed the correct chronologies, he actually used that to corroborate dates that he found in other Sanskrit texts. So in doing so, what he has done is he has listed all his references. He has listed every reference that he has consulted, and he has provided a tremendous amount of detail. He identifies the text, he identifies the chapter, and he identifies the sloka that he used in his research work. He also had an original finding. He was the first person, I guess in the 1920s, to propose an out-of-India theory, thereby debunking the Aryan invasion theory. His theory was that migrations were out of India, not into India. And finally, he challenges the arbitrary Christian calendar that we use today. And he points out that it is strange that that calendar was not established until the 6th century AD. So anyhow, I'll leave that there. So we've covered this, that Puranas are a source of historical information. So that was part one, the biography of the author. The second part is who were the people who actually distorted Indian history and why did they do so? So here I list some names. You'll find that William Jones belonged to the 1750s, which is the 18th century, and Max Miller and everybody else belonged to the 19th century, around 1850 roughly. And you'll find that William Jones was the one who started this problem of distorting Indian history. And the reason is that being a staunch Christian, he believed, the Old Testament of the Bible says that God created the earth in 4004 BC. And so William Jones was a staunch Christian, and he was reading Sanskrit texts through a Christian lens. And so he decided that Indian history had to start in 2029. So it could not be older than that. So for that, he had to reject everything before the Kali Yuga and said everything written in Indian texts before the Kali Yuga is fiction. I mean, it's poetry or prose. He said it cannot be believed, cannot be trusted. And so he rejected those. And instead, they started using texts written by foreign travelers who visited India, like Fahian and Huon Sang and Megasthenes. So anyhow, in doing so, to shrink Indian history, what he removed 1,000 years before the Mahabharata war, had to remove 1,200 years. Yeah, I won't read these bullets, but the point is he had to make all of these distortions to make his theory fit. Max Miller later created the Aryan ration and the Aryan invasion theory. And here is the source of the problem at the bottom. I call it Greek synchronism. And synchronism is trying to align two calendars. The important thing to remember here is that the Western calendar and the Hindu calendar have nothing in common. They are not similar in any way. So to convert a date from the Western calendar to the Hindu calendar is not possible. It is absolutely not possible. The only way you can translate one date to another is by finding a global event that connects the two calendars, because when the two calendars are connected by an event, you know what the date is in each calendar respectively. And so you can establish a synchronism. And then traversing on either side by 100 years or 1,000 years becomes easy. Is this point clear?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so what event did William Jones find? William Jones found the journey of Alexander to the east, and that was well known in the Western calendar. So when Alexander came to the Sindhu River approaching India, he was defeated by Samudragupta of the Gupta dynasty. And then after having been defeated, he left and went back and died on his way to Macedonia. So he actually died in Egypt. I think it was Alexandria where he died. But then his general called Seleucus later on sent Megasthenes to India as an ambassador, and people who were following Megasthenes apparently wrote constructs, texts about what Megasthenes saw in India. And in that book, which has never been found, now this is interesting. The original book by Megasthenes called Indica was never found. What they found was about 200 years later, and then 400 years later, there were two historians called Arrian and Strabo. And Arrian and Strabo supposedly wrote commentaries on the original text called Indica by Megasthenes. Those have not been found either. And this was, let's say, the 2nd century AD. And then people forgot about this until the 19th century, when an Englishman, who naturally was an employee of the East India Company, wrote a book called about Indica in the 19th century. And in the 19th century, he said he was quoting from Arrian and Strabo's commentaries on Indica, which were never found. And those accounts were talking about an event that happened 400 years prior. So this is the skimpy evidence. So when they talk about the scientific method, this flies in the face of it. But anyhow, the point being that in McCrindle's book from the 19th century, what William Jones found was 3 names of people who ruled over the Indian Empire in succession. So the first ruler was Sandrames. These are Greek names. So he's reproduced them in English text, but as Greek names: Sandrames, Sandracotus, and Sandrasiptus. And so because William Jones knew Greek very well, he was able to identify what Indian names could have been transformed into these. And so what I have is in red. The middle column is in red because that is where he found the match. And he found that Sandracotus actually is the translation or representation in Greek of the name Chandragupta. So now the question was, which Chandragupta? And he found 2 Chandraguptas, one belonging to the Maurya dynasty of the 16th century BC, and one belonging to the Gupta dynasty of the 4th century BC. Now, so if you look at these dates, you find that Alexander's journey to the east was in 327 BC. So it's a no-brainer that he belonged to his contemporary in India was Chandragupta of the Gupta dynasty and not that of Maurya dynasty. And William Jones knew what he was doing, but his job was to shrink that timeline. And so he pulled Indian history forward by about 1200 years by mapping Alexander to Chandragupta of the Maurya dynasty. Right? So that's where all of this began. So anyway, but the end result is our dates have been moved forward by 1200 years. So I went through this in detail last week. I won't repeat that, but the point is dates moved forward by 1200 years. And he removed Vikramaditya and Salivahana and their dynasties from Indian history. And that spans about 1300 years. And you all are probably aware that we actually have a calendar named after Vikramaditya. We have the Vikramasaka, which is in use even today. So if you open a Panchanga, you open a Hindu calendar, you find 3 dates. you find one date in Vikrama Saka, you find one date in Salivahana Saka, you find one in Kali Yuga. So you find 3 dates for the current year. Has anyone noticed this in Panchangas and calendars? I will take that as a no. So in Panchangas, you have the year represented in 3 different formats. One is in Vikrama Saka, one is in Salivahana Saka, and the third is in the Kali Saka.
Sir, I have a small doubt, sir. Can I ask you? Sorry for interruption.
Yes, go ahead.
Actually, you said there are two Chandraguptas. One belongs to Gupta and another Maurya.
Yes.
This is first time I am listening that William Jones, he intentionally diluted this historical theory. But later on, it is nowhere connected, nowhere it is corrected in any textbook.
No, actually, no, sir, that is not accurate. The fact that William Jones made this distortion is not a secret. This was known from the time of, I'd say, even the time of Max Miller. Max Miller lived almost 80 years after William Jones. So even in the 1850s, it was well known that William Jones actually made a distortion. People were protesting at that time, but the people who controlled the communication channels was the East India Company. So our traditional scholars never had a chance to refute this in those times. But my point is, coming to today, it is not a secret. So I don't think we should spend too much time on this. If you Google and find out contemporary of Alexander, just Google that and you'll find, or William Jones distortions, I think you'll find enough history there. So let's not go through what has already been established.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Right.
All right. So we just recapped parts 1 and 2. Part 1 is a biography of the author. Part 2 was a Purva Paksha on estimating the problem. What are the distortions? Who did them? And how deep are they? So how much correction do we need to apply in the reconstruction is the Purva Paksha. And then finally, we come to the Uttara Paksha. And the Uttara Paksha is the actual reconstructed chronology. So for the reconstructed chronology, the first thing, Panditji, I refer to him as Panditji because his name was Pandit Kota Venkatachalam until he became a Shankaracharya. So when I refer to events in his Turiya Ashrama, or actually in his Purva Ashrama before becoming a Shankaracharya, I refer to him as Panditji. When I talk about events after he became a Shankaracharya, I refer to him as Swamiji. And sometimes this has caused confusion, but I'm careful in addressing him correctly based on which part of his life I'm addressing. So anyhow, so he decided that the only way to do this properly is to start from the very beginning of time, meaning our Srishti. So from the Srishti, because William Jones asserted that according to the Old Testament in the Bible, the earth was created in 4004 BC. So that had to be refuted. So the point is, what do we believe? We believe that Srishti began a very long time ago. So in his reconstructed chronology, he divided history into 4 parts: the very ancient, the medieval, and the modern. All 4 of these I will show on the next slide. Maybe I should go there. Okay, so the reconstructed history was divided into 4 parts. The first is the very ancient, the second is the ancient, third is medieval, and the fourth is modern. So the very ancient, he felt, should start with the beginning of Srishti till the end of the 6th Manu. And that the ancient should start from the 7th Manu to the end of the 27th Mahayuga. And medieval begins from the 28th Mahayuga to the end of the Mahabharata War. And that the modern history starts from the Mahabharata War and goes on until 1193 AD, which is when Mughal invasions began. 1193 approximately is when Mughal invasions began. And history from that point forward is well documented. So we don't need to reinvent and re-research that portion. So the reason number 2 and 3 are in yellow is because Panditji felt that these two were adequately described in summary forms in our Puranas and Itihasas, and so he did not spend a lot of time on these. But the two topics that, well, the very ancient was never properly addressed in one place. And so he spent a lot of energy on that topic, on the very ancient history up to the 6th Manu. And then he spent the rest of his time documenting or reconstructing the history from the Mahabharata war to 1193, which is where most of the distortions were made. And at the top of the slide, I've just listed a few of the texts that he's consulted in doing his research. So you find a mix of the Vedas, you find Puranas, and then you find Nepal Rajavamsavali, you find Kalhana's Rajatarangini, you also find Buddhist texts, you find Jain texts, you find Al-Barani's India. Al-Barani was a Persian traveler that came to India in the 10th century. And he did a lot of research. He collected a lot of Sanskrit manuscripts, some of which he translated into Persian, some that he took back with him to Persia. But in his book called Al-Hind, in Al-Hind, he actually corroborates a lot of the dates, and this provides us the Persian synchronism. So suddenly Al-Barani, in his translation, connects Indian dates to the Persian calendar, and the Persian calendar is well connected to the Western calendar. And so we get Persian synchronism, and that's how we can map dates in the Hindu calendar to dates in the Western calendar. So any questions so far? If not, we'll just move on. So what I intend to cover are number 1 and 4, because that is where Panditji spent all of his time. So from the very first one, the first one is about Srishti itself. And this is timeless and endless. So the key point here is that time is a continuum that has no beginning and no end. So it's just a continuous continuum that has no beginning or an end, but there is a pattern that repeats in that continuum, and that pattern is Srishti. That a Brahmanda is created, the Brahmanda grows, the Brahmanda is destroyed, and the cycle starts all over again. So again, a new Brahmanda is created, the Brahmanda grows, and the Brahmanda is destroyed. So what I show over here, and what I'm trying to summarize here, so let me, we have begun republishing Panditji's books. So the book I have extracted some of this material from is this one called Manava Srishti Vijnanam, published in 1949, as well as from this book, which is I'm sorry, this, yeah, and this one. This book is called Brahmanda Srishti Vijnanam. So in Brahmanda Srishti Vijnanam is where he describes all of this. So I've taken only 2 or 3 slides to encapsulate what he's done in these 2 books. So I'm trying to provide a very brief summary of what he has done. So if you look at this picture, you find Vishnu at the bottom. What you find from Vishnu's navel is a cord that connects the Brahmanda, and at the top of that Brahmanda sits Brahma. And the reason for that is Brahma presides over the Brahmanda. And what does the Brahmanda look like? Brahmanda is, could you all go on mute, please? We're getting a lot of feedback. The Brahmanda is comprised of 14 heavenly bodies. The 7 on the top are called the Urdhva-lokas, and the 7 at the bottom are called the Patala-lokas. And in the middle is Bhugola, which is the earth. So above the earth, you have got all the Urdhva-lokas, and below the earth, you have the Patala-lokas. Now, this is described in detail in our Mahasankalpam, and our Mahasankalpam is something that is recited on very special occasions. And what the Mahasankalpam describes is the structure of the Brahmanda. In our Nitya Sankalpam, there are very small references to it, but primarily the Nitya Sankalpam is called Nitya, meaning unending. It has to be unending because it is counting the time from Srishti. So every day in the Nitya Sankalpam, you're incrementing that date. So each day you're keeping that current. And that is why it's called a Nitya Sankalpam. So now the easiest way to remember the names of these Urdhva Lokas is from our Nitya Sankalpam itself. Om Bhuhu, Om Bhuvaha, Om Swaha, Om Mahaha, Om Janaha, Om Tapaha, Om Satyam. So basically you've got the Bhuloka, Bhuvarloka, so on and so forth. So this, did I guess, make this point clear here? I'd like to clarify before I move forward.
Yes, sir.
Very
Yeah,
good.
you made it.
Then the Patala Lokas are named over here, Atala, Vitala, Sutala, all the way to Patala. So these are the 14 Lokas, and this is how the Brahmanda is created. So now the Brahmanda, like I said, is a pattern. It has a creation, a growth, and destruction. So it has a finite timeline. That time is well defined. And so exactly at the end of that time, the Brahmanda is destroyed and a new Brahmanda is created. So how do we keep time? And there we come to the Jyotish Chakra. And the Jyotish Chakra is the timekeeper in our Brahmanda. What is the Jyotish Chakra? The Jyotish Chakra is essentially the stellar and planetary systems. And all of the stellar and planetary systems are located in the Bhuvarloka, which is above the Bhuloka. So they are above the Bhuloka in the Bhuvarloka on the Z-axis, So, so I have a picture here. There's a picture on top. Can you see my cursor?
Yes.
Yes. So my cursor is on Mahavishnu here. So what I'm showing is in this circle, we have 12 zodiac signs. Now, a circle is comprised of 360 degrees. So if you had to put 12 zodiac signs in 360 degrees, and assuming that all of them are equal duration, then it is simple to calculate. 360 divided by 12 is 30 degrees. So 30 degrees is the duration of each zodiac sign. But then we also have 27 nakshatras, which is in the diagram below, Ashwini, Bharani, Swati, and so on. So you have these 27 nakshatras. So if you had to put the same 27 nakshatras in the same 360 degrees, you find that and assuming that they are all of equal duration, then the duration of a nakshatra is about 13 degrees and 30 minutes. So now if you superimpose the zodiac signs on top of the nakshatras, what you find is the zodiac sign, the Rasi, spans more than 2 nakshatras. So it's 2 point something. But then it total adds up to 360 either way you calculate. So this is how we came up with nakshatras and Rasis. And so there is an order to that. And we have stellar maps are available. You can look at a Panchanga or you can actually Google it. But you can find the map of the nakshatras and Rasis. So we were talking about timekeeper. So at the beginning of time, at the beginning of Srishti, all the stellar and planetary systems are together in one place. And that date it is always a Sunday. It is Chaitra Sukla Pajyami. That is where the calendar starts. That is where the Brahmanda starts. That is where Srishti starts. So all the stellar and planetary systems are actually in the Ashwini Nakshatra or Mesha Rasi. Take the duration of the Brahmanda to complete a complete cycle. And at the end of that bigger cycle is when we have the Mahapralaya, when the Brahmanda is destroyed and a new Brahmanda is created. Now, I do want to draw your attention that we have 3 kinds of pralayas. It's not just the Mahapralaya. What I described right now is the Mahapralaya that happens at the end of Srishti, when the Brahmanda is destroyed and a new Brahmanda is born. But there are 2 other pralayas during which the Brahmanda is not destroyed, but everything gets reset and a new yuga starts. So the first one is called a Yuga Pralaya. And at the end of a Mahayuga, you have what is called the Jala Pralaya. And there's a complete reset and then a new yuga starts. And then, of course, at the end of Srishti is when there's a Mahapralaya that destroys the entire Brahmanda. And incidentally, the duration of that Brahmanda corresponds to the lifespan of Brahma. So Brahma lives to be 100 years on his time scale, and the duration of the Brahmanda is also 100 years in Brahma's time scale. So Brahma lives only as long as the Brahmanda he presides over, and then a new Brahma is born and a new Srishti takes place. Any questions so far? Man, you're all quiet, really quiet.
I just had a question. This is really interesting. I had a question about this pralaya. So you mean to say that after the Mahapralaya, it's again starts with a Yuga Pralaya. Once that is reset, then the Jala Pralaya starts, right? Is that what you were saying?
No. I was just saying that, most of us, at least I, for a long time during my childhood, I always thought there was only one Pralaya until I started reading my grandfather's books. Incidentally, if there's anyone new here, Pandit Kota Venkatachalam is my maternal grandfather, my mother's father. So it was not until I started reading his books that I realized there were three kinds of pralayas, and they happen at different times. And I'll get to that in the next slide. So if you could perhaps...
okay, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions before we move on? All right. So this is the structure. On what this slide, what I'm trying to cover is the structure of the Brahmanda and how we keep time, how we know where it starts, how we know when it ends, so that the pattern repeats in the continuum of time. So the next is the cosmic units of time. I'm sorry, was there a question?
Yeah. Similar to Brahma, right? Like you're saying like Brahmanda's lifetime is equal to.
Who is speaking?
Sorry?
Could you introduce yourself first?
Yeah, this is Sridhar.
Yes.
So you said like, the life of the Brahmanda is equal to Brahma's lifespan, right? So in the same way, like how the Lord Vishnu's lifespan is related in this context, like how?
Yeah. I cover that in I think 2 slides or 3 slides from now. I cover that later.
Okay.
But suffice it to say that the lifespan of Brahma is one day in Vishnu's time scale.
Oh, okay.
But the lifespan of Vishnu is much larger than 100 years of it in his time scale. It's much larger, but I covered that on an upcoming slide. So I'll show it to you then. Right? All right. So the duration of the Brahmanda. So what's important to understand is, one, we talked about the lifespan of Brahma being 100 years on his time scale. So in 100 years, if you look at a day in the life of Brahma, by day, we mean day plus night, meaning daytime plus nighttime is, we call one day, meaning 24 hours. So in Sanskrit, it's called the Uday Kalpa, which is the period when there is light. And then at nighttime, you have the Kshay Kalpa. So one Udaya Kalpa plus one Kshay Kalpa is one Ahoratri. So what we loosely call one day in English is basically one Ahoratri. It covers the daytime and the nighttime, which is an Udaya Kalpa and Kshay Kalpa. So that is one day in the life of Brahma, which I show over here. If you can follow my cursor, this small narrow band over here is intended to represent one Ahoratri in the life of Brahma. Okay, so far?
Yes.
Yeah. I really appreciate someone responding. So if you take one kalpa or one ahoratri, or one, actually, let's talk about the Uday Kalpa, because the Kshay Kalpa is at night time when there is no Srishti happening. So if you take the Uday Kalpa, the Kalpa of Brahma can be divided into what are called 14 Manvantras. And that's what we're trying to show at the second level of decomposition over here. So that one Kalpa, one Uday Kalpa of Brahma is 14 Manvantras. Each Manvantara has its own Manu that presides over that Manvantara. So if you were to look in at one Manvantara here in the middle, each Manvantara can be divided into 71 Mahayugas, right? And then if you drill down further, you have a Mahayuga that can be broken into the 4 yugas that we are familiar with. So going from right to left, you have the Kali Yuga that we are in right now. Then you have the Dwapara Yuga, the Treta Yuga, and the Satya Yuga. Now, the Kali Yuga that we are now, as I said, so these 4 together represent one Mahayuga. And you have 71 such Mahayugas in one Manvantara. And you have 14 such Manvantaras in one Kalpa of Brahma, and Brahma lives for 100 years on that time scale. So the point
Sir,
is,
quick question here. Sorry to disturb you. Sudarshan here. So, do you mean to say like one kalpa is like one day for Brahma?
yes, that's exactly what I mean. There is an Udaya Kalpa,
Okay.
there's a Kshaya Kalpa. So the Udaya Kalpa is his daytime, the Kshaya Kalpa is his nighttime, and the two, so the daytime Kalpa and the nighttime Kalpa put together is one Ahoratri. So that is what we loosely refer to, like I said, as a day in English. So when we say a day, do we not mean 24 hours, meaning day plus night?
Yeah,
Yes.
yes.
So
Yes.
the same way, so instead of using the word day, the Sanskrit term is Ahoratri. Ahoratri means Udaya Kalpa plus Kshaya Kalpa. Right? So now Sridharji, you asked a question, Vishnu's lifespan. So Brahma's lifetime is one Kalpa of Vishnu. And Vishnu's lifespan, believe it or not, is 100 crore years on this time scale.
Okay.
Sridharji, does that answer your
Wow.
question?
Yeah. But
Okay.
how lifespan of Vishnu relates to the Brahmanda? Like, I mean, is it like multiple Brahmandas are there, or?
Well, yeah, if you look at this right here, you have, no, what we are talking about, one Brahma represents one Brahmanda.
Yeah.
You see Brahma here in the middle?
Yes.
Okay, Brahma presides over this Brahmanda, and Brahma exists only as long as the Brahmanda exists.
Okay.
At the end of this Srishti, this Brahmanda is destroyed and a new Brahma is born.
Got it. Yeah. In the same way, like you correlate same way to Vishnu's lifespan. Is there any other like multiple is taken care by him, or how does it work? I mean, is there any?
Sir, the life of the Brahma is the duration of our Brahmanda.
Okay.
They are one and the same. Brahma creates the Brahmanda, and then Brahma leaves at the end of that Brahmanda.
Okay.
And then a new Brahmanda is created and a new Brahma is born, who will preside over that Brahmanda.
Okay.
So does that answer your question, sir?
Yeah.
Okay. So,
Sir, sorry to disturb. 100 crore years of
please introduce
Vishnu,
yourself.
as per his time scale or our time scale?
No, because see, when I'm presenting, I can't see who's speaking. So please introduce yourself.
Okay, so this is Kotesh.
Yes, sir, your question?
Okay, the question is, you mentioned about 100 crore years of Vishnu as his lifespan. So as per his time scale, there is a Vishnu Loka or our time scale?
See, see, we are in this Kali Yuga here.
Correct.
Yes. Okay, and these 4 yugas, that's one Mahayuga, and there are 71 such Mahayugas in one Manvantara, and there are 14 Manvantaras in one Kalpa, meaning one day of Brahma, and Brahma lives for 100 years on that time scale based on the value of this one Kalpa, right?
Okay.
So what I'm trying to point out is, well, let me complete this first and I'll try to answer your question. So
okay, sure. Thank you.
this is described well in a Nitya Sankalpam. So if we have Nitya Sankalpam, so if you all remember, see, Nitya Sankalpa does two things. One, it identifies the time, date and time, and then it identifies the place. So basically in our Sankalpa, it says, Sri Mahavishnu Ragneya Dvitiya Parardhe. Let me explain Parardha. A Parardha means 50 years. So Dvitiya Parardhe means the second Parardha, meaning the second 50 years of Brahma. So if Brahma lives for 100 years, even in this diagram, it's almost divided in half. So this 100-year lifespan, here is the first Parardha that ends over here. And here is the second Parardha. So in our Nitya Sankalpa, we are saying Dvitiya Parardhe. So we're in the second Parardha. And then which Kalpa are we in? We're saying Svedavaraha Kalpe. We are in the Kalpa presided by Svedavaraha. So Dvitiya Parardhe, Svedavaraha Kalpe, Vaivasvata Manvantare. We are in the Manvantara that is presided over by Vaivasvata. Right? So Dvitiya Parardhe, Svetavaraha Kalpe, Vaivasvata Manvantare, Ashtavimsati Tame Kali Yuge, meaning the 28th Mahayuga of this Manvantara. We are in the 28th Mahayuga. And in that Mahayuga, we are in Kali Yuga, Prathame Pade, in the first quarter. Is that clear, sir? Sir, you had asked a question. Have I answered your question, sir?
Yeah, this I am aware of Kali Yuga, and we are being in Madhuri Padam. My question was 100 crore years of lifespan of Vishnu.
Yes.
So that is measured as per his time scale. So just confirm.
Yes, that is what I'm trying to show in this diagram. So one day in Kali Yuga is a very small number. Now,
makes
Kali
sense.
Yuga, right. So now let me also explain the relationship here. If you take Kali Yuga as 1 unit of time, then the Dwapar Yuga, please, did you mute yourself for getting feedback? So if you take Kali Yuga as 1 unit of time, then the Dwapar Yuga is twice the duration of the Kali Yuga. Treta Yuga, 3 times the duration of Kali Yuga, and Satya Yuga is 4 times the duration of a Kali Yuga. So these 4 yugas put together is 1 Mahayuga, and you have 71 Mahayugas in a Manvantara, 14 Manvantaras in 1 Kalpa, and 100 years of this life on this time scale is the lifespan of Brahma right here. Lifespan of Brahma. And that is 1 Kalpa. It is 1 Ahoratri of Vishnu.
Right. Yeah, makes sense. So there is a number given 300 plus trillion years. So yeah, understood, sir.
So Brahma's lifetime is equal to 1 Ahoratri of Vishnu.
Okay.
So if that is 1 Ahoratri, how much is 1 year? Multiply by 360 or 365. That is 1 year in the life of Vishnu, and he lives 100 crore of such years.
Okay.
So many Brahmas are born, many Brahmas leave, and new Brahmas come and go. So our Brahmandas we count in Satakoti and Sahasrakoti.
Okay.
Satakoti, not Sata, not 100, it's 100 crores. Satakoti, Sahasrakoti, Brahmanda. So our Brahmanda is not the only Brahmanda that exists.
Okay.
Right? So does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. It answers the question.
So this is Sonia. So just I think to clarify, so you said that Brahma lives for 100 years. Now each day is all relevant to their day. Vishnu lives for also 100 years, but one day is the lifetime of one Brahma. Correct?
Yeah, small correction. No,
okay.
Vishnu lives 100 crore years on his time scale, not 100 years. Brahma lives 100 years on his time scale. Vishnu's lifespan is 100 crore years.
100 crore years. Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. So that's the duration of the Brahmanda. So we've covered the structure. We've covered timekeeping in the Brahmanda, and how our Jyotish Chakra is the timekeeper, and we've also talked about how we measure the duration of Brahmanda.
Sir, sir, this is Ashwin, sir. And I have a small doubt regarding this yugas, what we have.
Yes.
Kruta Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga.
Yeah.
Okay, in Kali Yuga, we have 4,35,000 years, they say. And we
32.
are in Pradama Pade.
Right.
And Dwapara Yuga is something double than this, and Treta Yuga is double than this.
No, it's 3 times. Dwapara Yuga is 2 times, Treta Yuga is 3 times, and Kruta Yuga is 4 times.
Okay, fine. I need one calculation. Even in a Dwapara Yuga, 1 year means 365 days, or is it lesser than that?
No. The year is the same. There is no change in how the year is measured across a Mahayuga.
So my doubt is, recently I was talking to some persons, and they told me that Treta Yuga is some lakhs years back, before Dwapara Yuga, in which Rama was born. But a lot of people say Rama born some 20,000 years back.
No, that's not correct. I mean, depending on who you believe and who you trust. If you look at our texts, now again, did I mention that we are in the 28th Mahayuga of this Manvantara?
This is Kali Yuga. We are in Pradama Pade.
Understand, sir, but the Kali Yuga is part of a Mahayuga, is it not?
Yeah. My question, my doubt was...
No, sir, I understood your question. Please listen to my answer.
Okay.
We are in the 28th Mahayuga of this Manvantara, correct?
Yes, sir.
And we are in the Kali Yuga of the 28th Mahayuga.
Yeah.
Okay, Krishna was born in the Dwapara Yuga right before our Kali Yuga.
Yeah, 5,300 years, 30 years back.
Yeah, but it is in our Mahayuga.
Yeah.
Sri Rama was born in the 24th Mahayuga, not 28th.
This is confusion, sir. Then
No,
lot of ordinary man...
Sir, there is no confusion.
Understand this.
No, please hear me out. There is no confusion. Our texts clearly say he was born in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Mahayuga. There is absolutely no confusion. Our texts say that Sri Rama was born and Ramayana happened in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Mahayuga. In fact, in Brahmana Sastry Vijnanam, I will even open and show you where Panditji talks about this.
That means some lakhs of years back, Rama was born.
Yes, it means exactly that. It means it was about 1.6 crore years ago.
My God.
Yeah. So now the point is, everybody like William Jones is trying to fit it in this Mahayuga, and that is not correct.
And the reason why I'm asking is that recently in the Sri Lanka, the place where Ravana put Sita, the Ashoka tree, Vatika, on the carbon dating, it is showing us 20,000 years back.
Sir, we're going very far away from the topic of chronology. So please say...
This is the confusion I have, and since you are coming to the...
Please ask at the end of the presentation. We're running out of time.
Okay, sir.
I wanted questions only related to the slide I'm talking about.
Fine, sir. Okay.
I'll be happy to address other questions, but in the Q&A session.
Fine, sir. Fine. Okay,
right?
Okay.
So if you can, so at the end, I'll actually find you a page in this book where Panditji actually talks about when Ramayana actually happened.
Okay, sir. Okay.
All right. So, and here, just for our interest, I have tried to document from Panditji's books the kalpas of Brahma and a list of all the manus. So, in fact, over here you see there are 14 manvantras, and each manvantara is presided over by a distinct manu, which means there are 14 distinct manus, right? And here in this table, we have the names of those 14 manus in order. And we are in the manvantara presided by Vaivasvata, which is the 7th manvantara in this kalpa, right? That's the Vaivasvata manvantara. Now, if you look at the kalpas, if we have to cover 1 month, we have to cover 30 days. Meaning 15, the first 15 would be the Suklapaksha Kalpas, and the second 15 would be the Krishnapaksha Kalpas. So that's how we come up with 30. And you find we are in the Sveta Varaha Kalpa. So if you go back here, we are in the 51st year of Brahma, because in the Dvitiya Parardhe, we're in the Sveta Varaha Kalpa. So that is how that's why I've highlighted these two in red, so that you can identify them easily. So again, when we talk about triangulation and looking at corroborating evidence from different texts, Bhaskaracharya was a great astronomer, and he wrote an astronomical text called Siddhanta Shiromani. And in that Siddhanta Shiromani, he says, from the creation of the universe, 6 Manus, 27 Mahayugas, and in the 28th Mahayuga, the Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and in this Kali Yuga, 3,179 years have elapsed to the end of Vikramasaka. So this one sloka gives us so much information. It identifies and validates the duration of the Brahmanda, because he's talking about 6 Manus, meaning he's talking about the 7th Manvantara. So he says we are in the 7th Manvantara, 27 Mahayugas have elapsed, and in the 28th Mahayuga, the first yugas have elapsed, and in this Kali Yuga, 3179 years have elapsed to the end of the Vikramasaka, meaning the calendar that was established in honor of Vikramaditya. And so I just thought I'd put it here to show the amount of triangulation that Panditji has done in doing his research. The other thing I wanted to draw your attention to is the number system that Panditji found and actually highlights in his books. So these are named numbers, and these named numbers have specific meaning. So for example, Koti. So Koti 70, 1 followed by 7 zeros is Koti, or let's say 10 is 1 followed by 1 zero is 10. 1 followed by 2 zeros is 100. 1 followed by 3 zeros is 1,000, and a lakh, and a koti, and so on. And then you have a sahasra koti. The point is, Panditji says the largest named number he found was 1 followed by 62 zeros. That is, so these large numbers were known from the time of the Rig Veda. So what this highlights is that we had a decimal number system from the times of the Rig Veda that depended on positional notation, and that these large numbers allowed us to represent very large quantities. And these very large quantities are used in the measurement of time. So if you look at this here, if you had to calculate these with any accuracy and precision, then you need to be able to handle large numbers, correct or not?
Yes, sir. Without those numbers, right, it's very hard to deduce the time of universe, actually.
Correct. So now,
or document it.
Yes, it's not only for large amounts of time, it is also for large distances. So if you had to do astronomy and you had to talk about the distance between the sun and the earth, the number is so large, you need some number system that can represent it. Correct? Yeah, so I just wanted to put this in to add an additional dimension. So, the Western civilization, their history starts from the Renaissance. And they say that was the rebirth of knowledge, because they were discovering everything, on a daily basis, and that lasted 100 years. So my point is that before that 100 years, they didn't have such scholars. And after those 100 years, we never saw such scholars again. So all their discovery happened in 100 years when they were actually translating Sanskrit texts and Persian texts into European languages. That's where all this knowledge came from, because they had just gotten out of 1100 years of dark ages, and suddenly they had the Renaissance, and you wonder how savages and butchers were able to suddenly sit down and discover all of this knowledge. So again, the point, so if you had to think about, here's the challenge. The state of art at the time of the Renaissance for mathematics in Europe were Roman numbers. So if you had to represent the distance between the Earth and the Sun is 93 million miles. So if you had to represent 93 million miles in Roman numerals, how easy would it be?
It's very hard and very easy to get confused, actually.
Correct. And if you had to And if you had to multiply two large numbers in Roman numerals, so my point is, how could they have been leaders in astronomy if they were using Roman numbers? Or even for the measurement of time. So something to think about. All right, so I will, okay, I think I will stop here. We're almost out of time. We're at the almost at the 45-minute mark. So maybe now I can answer questions that I was not able to before. So somebody had a question. So could you please repeat your question? I'll try and answer it.
Yeah, sir, this is Ashwin. I was just asking you on the days and the years of all the yugas of this 28th.
Yes.
Particularly with the birth of Rama. Now, as per your information, what you are giving, it is 24th Mahayuga. Rama was born in the Treta Yuga. Now, this is 28th. Now, lot of people, after seeing that carbon dated thing, they say Rama must have born some 20,000 years back. Even the Saptarishi circulations around, they calculated the date of birth of Rama.
One second. You said carbon dating. Carbon dating of what?
Carbon dating of Rama's, Ravana's airport and some of the artifacts available there.
Where is that airport?
That has come in the paper also, sir. Long back I read it.
Sir, I'm looking for evidence. Show me the evidence. Show me the evidence that you actually found Ravana's airport and that you have done some research to establish its date. So I'm questioning your data. I'm questioning the validity of your data. Because you are assuming sir, please hear me out. You're assuming that your data is correct, and I'm challenging your data. And I'm saying you prove to me that you're right.
It has come in the paper and I read it. I never said that I'm right.
No, sir. I have also seen in the paper on YouTube and other places that somebody says that Mahabharata happened in 5561 BC. That doesn't mean I believe it. Just because it came in the paper, I can't believe it.
Then how to trust and whom to trust? Which is the original source, sir? It leads a lot of confusion.
Exactly, and that is what I'm trying to present. That my grandfather, Pandit Kota Venkatachalam, actually spent 51 years doing this reconstruction. And according to him, the reason
I got in WhatsApp also, Lord Krishna was dead 5036 years soon after the Mahabharata war.
Okay, so let me just complete this. So according to Pandit Kota Venkatachalam, he established the date of the Mahabharata war as 3138 BC. And people like, let's say, I have seen Nileshok. Some people have heard of Nileshok. Nileshok says it happened in 5561. Do you see how much of a variance there is from between this number and that number?
Yes, sir.
Now Nileshok has published books with that date. He has published YouTube videos based on that date. And I'm also asserting in my videos that Pandit Kota Venkatachalam asserts that 3138 is the date of the Mahabharata war. So now you have two numbers. So which one do you believe? And the question is, what is the supporting data?
Then whom to believe and what is the original authentic information?
Yes, and that is the triangulation I'm talking about. So if you look at this carefully, from the creation of the universe, 6 Manus, 27 Mahayugas, and in this Mahayuga, the Krita, Treta, Dwapara, and in this Kali Yuga, 3179 years have elapsed. So if to the end of Vikramasaka. So you have to interpret this. To interpret this, you have to be aware of this duration, this breakdown. Without knowing this breakdown, you cannot come up with the answer here. So now let me hide this for a second. So I told you about a Nitya Sankalpa. So, Dvitiya Pararde Svetavaraha Kalpe. So based on all of that, in 1944, Pandit Kota Venkatachalam calculated that the age of our Brahmanda was 195. So please let me complete, sir. So in 1944, Pandit Kota Venkatachalam determined that the age of our Brahmanda was 195 crore years. Okay, so based on that, my point is you have to you have to look at our texts. What are our texts telling us? You have the Surya Siddhanta. The Surya Siddhanta gives you a lot of details on astronomy as well as on geography. So, the point is, what is the data that conclusion is based on? Unless you have that, say, without knowing what data is the basis for that assertion, I cannot say why it is right or why it is wrong. I can explain to you what Pandit Kota Venkatachalam has done. That I know because he has provided all the references in his books. So you can see the data that is the basis and the foundation for his assumptions and calculations. So if you're talking about a newspaper article that I have not seen, I'm not in a position to comment on whether that is right or wrong. But I can tell you that what our texts say, our Puranas tell you that Rama was born in the Treta Yuga of the 24th Mahayuga. So if somebody is disagreeing with that, then they will have to explain why our Puranas are wrong.
This is Sonia. Namaste.
So can you go back? Namaste. Can I talk, sir? This is Vasudha.
Yes, please. Can everyone else go on mute, please? We're getting feedback.
Yeah, I have just a quick question. Oh, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. This is Sonia. Can you go back one? I just had a quick question about Vyasa. I think you said the next Vyasa is Ashwatthama. So what is where does Vyasa fall in this diagram?
Oh, no, Vyasa is not in this diagram.
No?
I just added, no, I'm trying to condense into 3 slides the content of
this book.
These books.
Okay. Can you tell us where to get these books, please, at the end of your presentation? Thank you. Certainly.
So my point is these 4 slides summarize these 2 books. So that's gross injustice. But what I tried to do was touch the highlights of the 2 books and condense that into 3 slides. There is a tremendous amount of information in these 2 books. I really encourage the interested reader to read them, and provides a lot more information than I have on these 3 or 4 slides.
Yes, I agree, and pass it on to our children. Thank you. Yes.
Somebody else had a question? I see a hand raised.
Sir, this is Vasudha here. Actually, I'm in the railway station. Some sound may disturb you. I'm so sorry for that. But I have a quick question. According to you, it is one yuga is some lakhs of years, you're saying. But according to I really went through Nilesh Oak videos and all.
Yes.
So according to him, he proves it with a position of nakshatras and all that. So many proofs that he says. So according to him, it is only thousands. Like from Rama to the Krishna Avatara, he says that it is beyond, I think, 14 or 1,000 years before it is Rama Avatara. From Rama Avatara to Krishna Avatara, it is only thousands of years. But according to you, it is lakhs, you're saying.
Well, according
to
my
confusion.
Correct. So here is my response. My answer is based on what our texts say. Then if Nilesh Oak disagrees with the text, he has to first explain why our texts are wrong and why they need to be corrected. Right? So the Surya Siddhanta, these numbers are straight from the Surya Siddhanta. The Surya Siddhanta is the basis for all of our astronomy. And these numbers are from the Surya Siddhanta. Now, these are called human years. There is also a concept of divine years or Daiva Yugas. Daiva Yugas. And in that, what they are saying is that the Kali Yuga is basically 1200 years. So it's 1200. This one is 2 times that, 2400. This is 3 times that, which is 3600. And this one is 4800 years. So I have seen all that theory. My point is, how do you translate that into a chronology? What I need is a chronology where Kali Yuga maps correctly, where the Krishna's birth maps correctly. Now, what Nilesh Oak has done is given me one date, and that is the Mahabharata war. What I am giving you is a complete chronology based on the Mahabharata war. A Mahabharata war with this as the root date. If the Mahabharata war happened here, I am giving you a complete chronology from this date to this date. What Nilesh Oak has done is he has given one and only one date. In fact, I have met Nilesh Oak. We were at a conference where both of us were presenting papers. And I, of course, was presenting the works of Pandit Kota Venkatachalam. And Nilesh Oak, this topic did come up when he was speaking. And his reaction to a question was, I will not prove that I am right. You prove that I am wrong. And so my point is, when I heard that, I'm thinking that one date is not is less valuable to me. What is more valuable to me is I want to see a complete chronology based on that date. So if Mahabharata war indeed started in 55-61, then I need to know when Kali Yuga took place. When did Kali Yuga happen? Because Kali Yuga is, I think, a non-negotiable date. It's an absolute marker on a timeline. So if Kali Yuga happened in 3102 BC, then, and if Mahabharata took place in 55-61, are you telling me Yudhishthira ruled for about 2,300 years or 2,400 years to Kali Yuga? See, there are a lot of triangulation that needs to be done. I need a complete chronology. Otherwise, it's very difficult to comment on a single date. See, Mahabharata war has been very contentious. When Pandit Kota Venkatachalam published this number 70 years ago, a lot of people have challenged it in recent times. Most of them are about 50, 60 years from this date, some before, some after. Nilesh Oak is the only one that actually is an outlier. Now, Nilesh Oak's research is actually based on the research of Dr. P.V. Vartak. So Dr. P.V. Vartak, who passed away only 3 or 4 years ago, who was a contemporary of Pandit Kota Venkatachalam, published about 30, 40 years ago, and 55-61 is his date. And that is the date that Nilesh Oak is repeating. So my point is, what is more valuable than a single date is a complete chronology till 1193. And from 55-61, I would really like to see a complete chronology that shows me when Kali Yuga took place, where Vikrama Sakka started, where Salivahana Sakka started. Show me where Adi Shankara was born. Show me Buddha according to that timeline. So unless I have that chronology, it is difficult for me to compare. I'm intimately familiar with what Nilesh Oak has written. What I'm trying to present is something that he is trying to refute. But in refuting that, instead of a complete chronology, he is giving me one date. That is my difficulty. So I'm not able to respond because I have only one date to go by. I need to know when he asserts that Kali Yuga happened. Ma'am, does that answer your question?
Thank you, sir. I'm not in the position. There's a lot of disturbance here. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Okay, sir, I'll go ahead with one last relevant question my side.
Yes.
As far as I know, several Brahmas will leave their bodies, and Vishnu also leaves the body. And as on today, there are several Shivas existing, and they will also leave their body, as far as I know. And several Shivas also will take birth, and they keep on leaving their bodies. Who will stay permanently? Is it Raja Rajeshwari, as far as I know? I don't know whether this book covers or not.
No,
Just
it doesn't.
curious.
This book is very tightly focused on chronology. So
Okay.
I'd like to keep the topic on chronology and not get into other topics. So is your question related to chronology?
Not in terms of relevance with the chronology, but in relevance to the Brahma's lifespan that you mentioned, because Brahmas will leave with their bodies, and then on top of that we have Vishnu, and Vishnu also leaves the body. So I'm going a little above this.
What is your question?
So the question is, Brahmas will leave body, Vishnu will leave body, and Shiva will leave body, and who will stay permanently? So that is the question.
You'll have to read this book. The Brahmanda Srishti Vijnanam describes that in a good deal of detail. So
Okay.
I suggest you read Brahma. I'll hold it up. We recently republished this book. It's called Brahmanda Srishti Vijnanam.
Okay.
And it covers a lot more detail than I have on this slide.
Okay, sir. Thank you. That's all.
Yes, sir. Sudarshan Garu, you have a question? I see your hand raised.
Hello. Am I audible to you, sir?
Yes, please go on.
Yeah. Okay. So in your if someone did read Ramayana, okay, like in Ramayana, okay, in Yuddhakanda, right? Okay, Shuka and Sarana, they meet Ravana and then they give a count of how many Vanaras are there in the Vanara Sainyam. And the numbering system, okay, at that point of time, okay, that they really that numbering system, right? Like how many numbers are one number, how many numbers are the number. I'm not getting those numbers actually. That is a proof that, okay, that is a proof I think which supports your grandfather's theory, sir.
Yeah, no, that is true.
I just wanted to say that.
Oh no, that's
I just
right.
wanted to say that actually.
No, thank you. But did you have a question with that?
And also, I never had I didn't have a question actually, but I just want to, and also I think so I'll leave it to anyone who has question. By this I'm done, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
So, one quick question, like similar to like Brahma's lifetime and Vishnu's lifespan, is there anywhere mentioned about Lord Shiva's lifespan as well?
Yes, the Puranas describe all of this in detail. So
Okay.
on the topic of okay, let's go back to the topic of Puranas. Yeah, so Puranas as a source of historical information. So the Puranas, again, there are two categories of Puranas. You have the Mahapuranas